This is the video demonstration for gross pay. And in this video, I'm going to be working example number 1. And the information that I'm using is also available on our course website. So if you want to, you can print that information out and follow along with the video, or you can just look at the information that's actually included in the video. And we have, in this case, it says in each of the following cases, calculate the total gross pay for a weekly pay period. So remember, that's our pay period, weekly. We need to know that because the information in some of these cases may not be presented in a weekly format. And if that's the case, I might have to do some manipulation to get the information in the format that I need. So we have 5 different situations. And the very first situation says an employee earns $8.20 per hour and worked 55 hours this week. Now to solve this, I'm going to utilize Excel. And if you would like to, you could also use Excel to work this type of problem. But if not, you could always work this on your own paper. I just use Excel in the videos because I think it makes it a little bit easier for you to see the solution as I work it out. Now in this case, it said the hourly rate that this employee earns is $8.20 per hour. So I'm going to start off with that. And it says they worked overtime. In fact, they worked 55 hours. Well, we know that the normal standard work week is actually 40 hours. So there's going to be an initial amount that they're going to make for the regular pay. So if I'll take that $8.20 that they make per hour and multiply that by 40, that means they're going to make $328 just for the first 40 hours that they worked. But there's an additional 15 hours that they worked because they worked 55 hours overall. Now that's going to be based partially on the regular rate of $8.20 an hour, but I also have to add the overtime rate. Now remember, unless we're told otherwise, we assume an overtime of 1.5 times the regular rate. So what I'll do here is I'll get the $8.20. I'll multiply that by the extra 15 hours, and then I'll multiply that by the 1.5, and that will give me the overtime pay. The overtime pay is $184.50. So then all I have to do is add these two together, and that will give me the total pay for that employee for that week, $512.50. So the key to that situation is simply remembering that the overtime hours, anything above 40, is at 1.5 times the normal rate. Now the second case, this is a salary non-exempt employee who earns an annual salary of $33,000, and this employee worked 43 hours this week. Now what's interesting about this is a salary non-exempt employee. Well, remember, if you're salary non-exempt, that means you do get paid for overtime. And this person did actually work a few hours of overtime because they worked 43 hours. But I do have another problem, and that is that they gave me the salary in an annual format, an annual salary of $33,000. Well, I'm trying to do this for a weekly pay period. So I'm going to have to take that $33,000 and do some manipulation to get that into the proper format. So in this case, I'm going to start off with the $33,000 salary. Now that would be for an entire year. What I want to get from that is an hourly rate. Well, that's for the entire year. I'm trying to get it down to the hourly rate per week. So there's 52 weeks in a year, and there's 40 hours in each week. So if I'll take that $33,000 and divide that by the 52 weeks in the year, and then further divide that by the 40 hours in every week, that gives me the hourly rate. And the hourly rate is $15.87. So once I get that, I can then proceed, much like I did in case 1, and just calculate the pay. So $15.87 for the regular hourly rate. They worked 40 hours. In that case, that's going to be $15.87 times 40 hours worked. $634.80 for regular pay. Then I want the $1,587 again. They worked 3 overtime hours. 1.5 is the amount for overtime. So the hourly rate times the extra 3 hours times the 1.5 gives me $71.42. And then I'll add these two together. Altogether, $706.22 is the total gross pay for that employee. Now for case number 3. An employee earns a weekly salary, $750, plus a 6% commission on sales, and the employee earned $2,500 this week. So yet another situation. And the key to these really is just looking at each situation, case by case, looking at the information, and thinking about a weekly format. So in this case, I've got a commission based on sales. Well, they sold $2,500 worth of merchandise. They're entitled to a 6% commission. Well, 6% as a decimal is 0.06. So what I can do then is take the $2,500, I can multiply that by 0.06, and that gives me a $150 commission. And then I tack onto that the $750 salary, and then I just add these two together. So that gives me $900 total pay for that particular employee. Now, case number 4. This is a salaried exempt employee who earns a weekly salary of $760. And this employee worked 44 hours this week. Well, this is a little bit of a trick question. They worked 44 hours, but it's a salaried exempt employee. Well, salaried exempt employees, they don't get paid for overtime. So I actually have nothing to calculate on this. They're only going to simply make the salary, the set salary of $760 for that week. So kind of a trick question there. There's nothing to calculate. Salary exempt employees don't get overtime. And then the 5th and final case, a salary non-exempt employee earns a monthly salary of $2,000, and they worked 56 hours this particular week. Now this is going to be a little bit of a tough one because I'm going to have to manipulate that information a little bit. $2,000 monthly salary, well, there's 12 months in a year, then there's 52 weeks in a year, then there's 40 hours in every week. So I'm going to have to take the $2,000 each month, multiply that by 12 months in the year, divide that by 52 weeks, and divide that by 40 hours in a week. So I have to do all that manipulation to get that into the proper format. So a person who makes a monthly salary of $2,000 makes an hourly rate of $11.54. So it's $11.54 for the first 40 hours. So I will multiply 11.54 times 40. Then it's 11.54 for the overtime hours. They worked 56 hours altogether, so that's an extra 16 hours. But I've got to remember my time and a half. So the 11.54 times the 16 extra hours times the 1.5 gives me that amount. Then I simply add these two together to get that person's total pay, which is $738.56. So that completes the 5 case examples on example 1 for gross pay. And the key is that no two employees are necessarily alike. Some of them are hourly, some of them are salary, some exempt, some non-exempt. The key to it is just look at the information, think about your pay period, and if you have to manipulate the information, that's fine. But then once you get it into the proper format, then you can actually calculate the gross pay.